Knee-high to a grasshopper. What the heck does that have to do with growing and building and making sure that your business is successful? Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here with the expression today, the idiom today, knee-high to a grasshopper. Now, if you were actually knee-high to a grasshopper, you'd be about an inch tall, which is the size of this M&M. A little bit, this is about an inch and a quarter. But you get the idea. You'd be pretty short and pretty small. Knee-high to a grasshopper means very young and therefore usually very short. Now, probably if you're over 5'2", you don't feel that you're very short. I am, of course, 5'1.5" and I felt short pretty much the majority of my life. But it doesn't matter how tall we are, because that's one of those things that we absolutely positively cannot control. And there's many things like that in our lives and in our businesses as we're growing and developing our businesses. This expression was first known as and documented in 1814, it's an American expression, as knee-high to a toad. Now, toads have knees, and I'm not sure what the span is of that, because toads come in all different shapes and sizes, but it still implies very small and very young. A toad is usually considered young because I don't think they have a huge lifespan. In 1850, it was written and documented, and the knee-high to a grasshopper finally caught on. People used to say knee-high to a toad, that was the first one, knee-high to a duck, knee-high to a splinter, which doesn't even have knees, it's just a little small piece of wood, right? Bumblebee, mosquito, there were all kinds of sayings, and it was finally knee-high to a grasshopper that stuck, probably because grasshoppers have very distinctive knees. Well, what this idiom reminds me of and reminds me to think about with respect to my business, growing and running my business, is that we compare everything. We compare our business to other people's businesses. We compare our brand to other people's brands. We compare the amount of money we make to other people. We compare our height to other people, right? You notice if somebody's really, really tall or really, really short. And we notice those things. But most people are about average and in the middle. And it's the tall people and the short people that we tend to notice the most. It's the same thing with our businesses. It's the really awesome performers or the little guy that's coming up that we notice the most, the underdog, as my friend JJ says. So comparing ourselves to others can be beneficial if we're doing it in a positive way to encourage us and motivate us to become more of what we want to become. But if we're comparing ourselves to others to shut ourselves down, to stop going after our dreams, to stop going for what we want, then comparison is a bad thing. We have to remember when we're comparing ourselves to anyone else, to anyone else's business, that we only ever see or know a very minuscule part of the story. We only ever see the tip of the iceberg. No matter how much time we spend with another human being, we never truly know them. Heck, most of us never even truly 100% know ourselves, so how could we ever expect to know other people or other people's stories? And that includes their business story, their brand story. They only show us, and we only see what they're willing to put out there. I don't know about you, but I couldn't possibly share everything I think and feel with the world, and neither could a brand or business. And it would be like not reading a book or a story or a movie. Instead of seeing just the highlights, you would see everything. And most of everything is pretty dull and boring and humdrum and mundane, right? The majority of the things that we do on a daily basis are just routine, right? They're routine, they're habit. We get up, we brush our teeth, we do what we do in our morning routine. And we do most of it out of habit. That goes for sure with our businesses as well. A lot of the things that we set up in our business become routine and habits. We put in processes and systems and procedures to make sure that we're getting consistent results. The other thing that being knee-high to a grasshopper reminds me of is that we need to measure things. We measure things that matter for us in our businesses. We measure the things that we want to give emphasis to, that we want to make sure that we're achieving in our business. Most of us measure profitability. Most of us measure cash flow. Most of us measure customer feedback and customer information, because we want our customers to know that we care about them. And in order for us to prove to ourselves and make sure we're paying attention to the things that matter to our customers, we need to pick some key performance indicators, key numbers that we look at on a regular basis to make sure that we're growing and progressing and moving in the direction that we want to move. This expression also reminds me of competition and how we try to be like the competition or beat the competition. And I have a few thoughts on that as well. Competition, like everything else, is relative, right? Where we stack up to the competition is a measure of something outside of us, and it's a very subjective thing, right? You can compare numbers to numbers, like, okay, they make $1 billion of profit, we only make 700 million. You could do something like that. And is that company better than you because they make $1 billion? Or no, you don't really know anything about that until you dig into and ask yourself, what are the things that are important to me as I'm growing and building my business? And so competition, I say, is irrelevant as long as you are doing the best you can to serve the people that you're here to serve, to create the products and services and give the value that you're here to serve to your customers. Because guess what? Your customers are not your competition's customers unless you don't serve them well, and then they might go to the competition to get their needs met. The final thing that this reminds me of is that we need to focus on what we can do. Right now we're in this situation, the vast majority of the population, where we're being told we can and cannot do. And that doesn't feel good for us, especially as business owners, right? It kind of freaks us out, because part of why we have our own businesses is because we want to make the rules. We want to set our own destiny and create what we want in our lives. And so it's hard to think of the things that we cannot do. And that's why I say focus on the things you can do, because there's things that are genetically predispositioned for us. I was destined to be under 5'2". My whole family is very, very short. My grandfather on my mom's side was 5'2". My grandma on my dad's side was like 4'10" or shorter. She was a very tiny woman. All the women on my mom's side of the family are 5'2" or less, with the exception of 2 that made it to a whopping 5'3". So if I were to worry about and fret over my height, I would be miserable, because there's nothing I can do about it. Sure, I can wear 4-inch heels, but I can't walk in them anymore. They break my ankles. So I can just choose to focus on the things that I can impact and do, or I can feel bad about the things that I have no control over and that I can't change. So that's it. I actually find this expression very motivational and very happy, and it's fun for me because my mom used to use it when we were little girls growing up. She'd say something was to describe it as being very small. She would say, oh, that's just knee high to a grasshopper. Or she would use it to describe somebody that just had a young child or a baby or something. So that's it. I would love to know what you think of this expression. Share in the comments below. If there's an idiom you'd like to know the meaning of it, just share that below too, and I will look it up and share it in one of these videos, so that or audios if you're listening to the podcast, so that we can explore together what these idioms mean, how long they've been around, and how they might be impacting you and your business. Take care, have an awesome day, and I will be with you tomorrow.